In the late 1960s, California was a place of contrasts, a land of sun-drenched beaches, counterculture revolutions, and the promise of a new American dream. But beneath the surface, a shadow was growing. The state, and especially the Bay Area, was about to become the stage for one of the most chilling and mysterious crime sprees in history. It was a time when the world seemed to be changing overnight, and the optimism of the era was suddenly threatened by a series of brutal, inexplicable murders that would haunt the collective memory of a generation. The story begins in the summer of 1968, when the first known victims were discovered on a quiet stretch of road near Vallejo, California. Two teenagers, out for a drive, were gunned down in their car in what seemed at first like a senseless act of violence. But this was only the beginning. Over the next several years, a string of attacks would follow, each more brazen, each more terrifying, and each leaving behind a trail of fear that spread across Northern California like wildfire. The killer, who would soon come to be known as the Zodiac, was unlike any criminal the region had ever seen. He didn't just strike and disappear. He taunted the police, the press, and the public with a series of cryptic letters, phone calls, and ciphers. These messages, sent to local newspapers and law enforcement agencies, were filled with chilling boasts, bizarre symbols, and threats of further violence. Some included details only the killer could have known, while others contained mysterious codes that would baffle even the most seasoned cryptographers. For decades, as the Zodiac's reign of terror continued, the people of California found themselves gripped by a sense of dread. Parents kept their children indoors after dark. Couples thought twice before parking on lonely roads. The police, overwhelmed and under pressure, launched one of the largest manhunts in state history. Detectives pored over evidence, chased down leads, and interviewed hundreds of suspects, but the killer always seemed to be one step ahead. The Zodiac was a serial killer who called himself the Zodiac, a man with no known face, no confirmed identity, but a trail of terror and cryptic letters that baffled police for decades. He claimed responsibility for at least 5 murders, though he hinted at many more. His victims were young and old, men and women, attacked in cars, on lovers' lanes, and even in broad daylight. Each crime scene seemed to offer new clues, but also new mysteries. The killer's letters, often signed with a strange crosshair symbol, taunted investigators and threatened further violence if his demands were not met. The Zodiac ciphers became infamous in their own right. Some were cracked by amateur codebreakers, revealing chilling messages about his motives and his desire to collect slaves for the afterlife. Others remain unsolved to this day, fueling endless speculation about the killer's true identity and intentions. The media frenzy surrounding the case only added to the sense of panic, as newspapers published the Zodiac's letters and the public tried to decipher his twisted mind. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the Zodiac was never caught. Over the years, dozens of suspects were investigated, from local eccentrics to notorious criminals, but none could be definitively linked to the crimes. The case became a national obsession, inspiring books, movies, and countless theories about who the Zodiac really was. Some believed he was a disgruntled loner. Others thought he might be a member of law enforcement, or even a group of killers working together. As the years passed, the Zodiac's trail grew cold, but his legend only grew. New evidence would occasionally surface: a mysterious fingerprint, a long-lost letter, a possible DNA match. But the truth remained elusive. For the families of the victims, the pain never faded, and the questions never stopped. Who was the Zodiac? Why did he kill? And could he still be out there, watching, waiting, ready to strike again? The chilling mystery of the Zodiac Killer endures to this day, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most idyllic places. His crimes changed California forever, leaving a legacy of fear, fascination, and unanswered questions that continue to captivate the world. It all began in 1968, a year that would become infamous in the annals of American crime history. The world was changing rapidly. Protests, music, and a sense of unrest filled the air in California. But beneath the surface, something far more sinister was brewing. In the quiet suburbs, where families felt safe and the American dream seemed alive, a darkness was about to descend that would haunt the region for decades to come. The streets, usually filled with laughter and the hum of daily life, would soon echo with fear and uncertainty. On a chilly night in December, two young people, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, drove out to a secluded spot, perhaps seeking a moment of privacy away from the watchful eyes of their small town. They parked their car on a lonely stretch of road, unaware that their lives were about to be cut tragically short. As they sat together, an unknown figure approached in the darkness. Without warning, shots rang out, shattering the stillness of the night. The aftermath was devastating. Both Betty Lou and David were found dead, their dreams and futures stolen in an instant. The police arrived to a scene of confusion and horror, the flashing red and blue lights illuminating a mystery that would only deepen with time. Investigators combed through the evidence, searching for answers, but the killer had vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions and grief. The news of the murders spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community. Headlines screamed of a brutal double homicide, and fear began to take hold. But this was only the beginning. In the weeks and months that followed, more murders would occur, each one seemingly unconnected, yet sharing a chilling pattern. Different victims, different places, but always the same eerie signature, a sense of calculated cruelty, and soon cryptic letters sent to newspapers, taunting the police and the public. The killer, who would come to be known as the Zodiac, seemed to relish the terror he inspired. Detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together clues, analyzing coded messages, and trying to predict where he might strike next. The community, once peaceful, now lived in the shadow of fear, locking their doors and looking over their shoulders. The spree had begun, and no one knew when or if it would ever end. In the late 1960s, as fear gripped Northern California, a new kind of terror began to seep into the public consciousness, not just through the brutal crimes themselves, but through the chilling correspondence that followed. The Zodiac Killer, as he would come to be known, didn't simply vanish into the night after his attacks. Instead, he reached out, inserting himself into the lives of ordinary people and the authorities alike by sending a series of taunting, cryptic letters to local newspapers. These weren't ordinary letters. They were filled with strange codes, mysterious symbols, and riddles that seemed to dare the world to try and understand him. Each envelope was a puzzle, a threat, and a challenge, all at once. The first letter arrived in August 1969, just weeks after the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. 3 different newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, each received a nearly identical letter. The writer claimed responsibility for the recent killings and demanded that his coded message be published on the front page of each paper, threatening further violence if his demands were not met. The letters were signed with a symbol that would become infamous, a circle with a cross through it, resembling a gun's crosshairs. This was the birth of the Zodiac's public persona. The codes themselves were a source of fascination and dread. The first cipher, known as the 4-on-8 symbol cipher, was a complex arrangement of letters and symbols. The Zodiac claimed that if anyone could solve it, they would know his identity. Amateur and professional code breakers alike pored over the ciphers, desperate to crack the killer's secret. Eventually, a high school teacher and his wife managed to decipher the first code, but instead of a name, the message was a chilling manifesto. The Zodiac described his love of killing, likening it to an addiction, and claimed that his victims would serve him in the afterlife. The lack of a name only deepened the mystery and the fear. As the months went on, more letters arrived. Some included details about the crimes that only the killer could have known, further cementing the Zodiac's credibility. Others contained new ciphers, some of which remain unsolved to this day. The letters were often laced with sarcasm and mockery, as the Zodiac taunted the police for their inability to catch him. He ridiculed detectives, boasted about his cleverness, and even threatened to attack school buses full of children, sending parents and teachers into a panic. The media frenzy that followed was unprecedented. Newspapers published the Zodiac's letters, hoping that someone might recognize the handwriting or the cryptic clues. The public was both horrified and captivated. Amateur sleuths, code breakers, and armchair detectives across the country tried to unravel the killer's riddles. The Zodiac seemed to relish the attention, feeding off the fear and confusion he created. He wrote, "I like killing people because it is so much fun," and signed off with his now iconic symbol and the name Zodiac, as if he were a character in a twisted game. The police, meanwhile, were left scrambling. Each new letter brought fresh leads, but also new dead ends. The killer's ability to communicate directly with the public, bypassing law enforcement, was both novel and deeply unsettling. The Zodiac's letters became a central part of the investigation, with handwriting experts, linguists, and cryptographers all called in to help. Yet despite their best efforts, the killer remained one step ahead. The psychological impact of the letters cannot be overstated. They transformed the Zodiac from a faceless murderer into a mythic figure, an enigma who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The codes and ciphers gave the crimes an added layer of complexity, making the case feel like a real-life detective story with the highest possible stakes. The Zodiac's words haunted the public imagination, and his threats kept entire communities on edge. Even decades later, the Zodiac's letters continue to fascinate and disturb. Some of his ciphers have never been solved, and the true meaning behind many of his messages remains a mystery. The letters are a testament to the killer's cunning and his desire to control the narrative, to instill fear not just through violence, but through words. They are a chilling reminder of how the Zodiac turned communication itself into a weapon, leaving behind a legacy of terror that endures to this day. Through these letters, the Zodiac mocked the police, claimed responsibility for the killings, and signed each message with the name Zodiac and his mysterious crosshair-like symbol. A haunting signature that would come to define one of America's most infamous unsolved cases. Some of his letters included detailed confessions, and others threatened more violence if his messages weren't published. He claimed to have killed over 37 people, though only a few murders were ever confirmed. For years, detectives, cryptographers, and amateur sleuths tried to break his codes. Some were finally solved, even 50 years later, but none revealed who the Zodiac truly was. Many suspects emerged, including Arthur Lee Gallen, but no one was ever charged. The case remains officially unsolved. Even today, the Zodiac Killer stands as one of the greatest mysteries in criminal history, a symbol of fear, obsession, and unanswered questions. A haunting reminder that some secrets may never be revealed.